In this edition of Locked On Capitals, I talk about Dylan Strome and how he's making a lot of noise and kind of impressing people by scoring 2 goals in one game. Then we talk about Connor McMichael, who saw him practicing on the fourth line today. We'll talk about all of that and more of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check it out. On YouTube, make sure and hit that subscribe button. And if you like the videos, give it a thumbs up. It really helps grow the channel. My name is Dan Holme. You can on Twitter, DanCaps28. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. BetOnline is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, so just to get it going here, just in this episode, we're going to talk about how Connor McMichael was practicing on the fourth line today. And Peter Laviolette kind of said, don't look into that too much. Everything is kind of fluid at this point. And, they're trying to fill the role of Carl Hagelin on the fourth line, as we know that Carl Hagelin had an eye injury, of course, but it seems that there is another lingering injury that he's suffering with, so they have to fill someone in that position. But Connor McMichael had his eye set along with Dylan Strome and Lars Eller as that second line center. Is that, in fact, what is going to be the case? I guess it remains to be seen. When they were talking to Peter Laviolette today, they said, don't look too much into that. We're kind of trying different people in different positions, and who knows where these players will end up being. He said, I wouldn't put too much into it. He said simply, sometimes you move something up and you're looking at someone higher up in the lineup. That's a position that might be open, and we're trying to just manage 3 groups here at camp. Sometimes it's better to just get a workout by just keeping the group a little bit tighter. And, that is a very real possibility. And the NHL Network has kind of had him penciled in as being that fourth line left wing. So that is definitely a possibility. And, it's going to depend on what happens. I will say that one thing, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is that Dylan Strome did impress. So it's going to be a battle for that second line center. And, the best player is going to be the one that gets that job. And Connor McMichael, he did come in here on a mission. He came in here on a mission to try to impress. And I guess it needs to be seen where everything fits in. But another big player that we're going to talk about here in last night, of course, was Dylan Strome, scoring 2 goals in the second preseason game and already kind of just having chemistry with Connor Brown out there. So just a real bright moment out there. And Laviolette on his performance said, that's what we're looking at. Laviolette said Thursday, we're evaluating everything, and he's looked really good. I thought he was good on the power play last night. He looked good on the half wall. He looked good in the middle of the ice. There was a lot of positives to his games last night, and how there was that chemistry already with Connor Brown out there. And, that is a positive sign out there that these players, just in this small sample size already, just really have great chemistry together. So, if this is any indication of what this Capitals team is going to be like with Connor Brown and Dylan Strome out there, then I think that, it is a very positive outlook because, last season when we found out, or in the off season rather, that Nick Backstrom was going to have that hip resurfacing procedure done, and Tom Wilson had that knee injury, I think that there was a lot of doubt and a lot of questions surrounding this team. So the fact that, in the second preseason game that Dylan Strome and Connor Brown impressed out there, I think, is a really good sign out there. And, it remains to be seen what we can expect from him in the future, but a good indicator anyway. Not saying that it's locked in, but that's what training camp is for, is to put people in positions and see how they do. And I think he wants to play center. So if you want to play center, you should make some noise with your game. And I thought that he did. And, just going out there, and it wasn't even just the 2 goals, just his hockey IQ. You can tell the way he conducts himself out on the ice that he is, a legitimate, really great hockey player out there in a center. So, it kind of makes you wonder at the end of the day, why did the Chicago Blackhawks part with him? I guess we'll never really know on that one. It seems like that team is in a bit of transition out there, but their loss is the Washington Capitals' gain. Strome scored a career-high 22 goals with 26 assists in 69 games for the Blackhawks last season, but hit free agency after the rebuilding Chicago team declined to make him a qualifying offer. The Capitals signed him to a 1-year, $3.5 million deal, and he immediately entered the mix of players competing for minutes of the injured Nicklas Backstrom and Tom Wilson. And, that's what I'm talking about. That's what this little small episode is about. It's talking about Connor McMichael fighting for a job. It's about Dylan Strome. They're all fighting for Nick Backstrom's spot, to fill in for him in his absence. We know that Nick is going to be gone for a lengthy period, if not all of this season. So I think that this competition is going to make sure that the most qualified candidate gets that position. I'm definitely more comfortable in the middle, Strome said. That's been my position pretty much my whole life. I feel comfortable out there, feel like I can make plays and support my line mates, touch the puck a bit more. So it's the first time, but definitely feel more comfortable at center and can make some more plays. But whatever happens, happens. And that's the attitude that, you pretty much have to have out there, because you can only control so much. And what you can control is how you play out there. And watching that game last night, Strome was on a mission to impress, and he did that. And I was impressed. I again, like I talked about off the top there, I was impressed with the chemistry between Strome and Connor Brown. And, I know that it's not a real world experience, because it was a Flyers team that had a lot of rookies and probably players that aren't going to be playing on the big team. But still, in any case, it was a fun game to watch. And again, if that is any indication of what we have in store this year, then I'm very excited. You get him into that environment where there's a lot of guys who have a history of winning, finding success, looking at ultimate success. Laviolette said it's easy, I think, for a guy to come in and want to be a part of that and push himself to go and get there. And he has those skills in his tool set there to be able to do that. And, I think that the Capitals, to a certain extent, were in the right place at the right time, or Brian McClellan was anyway, to be able to sign someone like Dylan Strome out there, because you got to think that, with his skill set and what he brings to the game, I am surprised that there wasn't a bigger push, from a lot of other teams around the league to retain his services. Because as it stands right now, the Capitals really look like they got, I don't want to say diamond in the rough, but they were able to pick up a player that, for whatever the reason that the Chicago Blackhawks wanted to push him to the side, he has a home here in Washington, at least for this year. And, the fact that he can play wing, I think that he has a career here longer if he continues his success. I know that ostensibly, Nick Backstrom is going to come back next season. And, I don't want to get too into the weeds here about the success rate of that procedure, but say Nick does come back, and say for whatever reason he comes back and he's 100%. Well, if he does impress, I would expect that the Capitals would extend Dylan Strome and sign him to a new deal, because, again, and I hate to get ahead of myself, but if that last night was any indication of the kind of play that we're going to get from Connor Brown and Dylan Strome. And, I would think Connor McMichael this year, then I think that, that is an exciting thing for this team, a team that, everyone wants to kind of already discard and say, this team is too old and they're a bubble team and they'll be lucky if they make it to the playoffs. I have high hopes for this team, and I think that the arrow's pointing up. And last night was just a really positive moment, not just for Dylan Strome and Connor Brown, but also for the backup netminder in Charlie Lindgren, that position that was just inconsistent all of last season. Let's just leave it at that. So for Charlie Lindgren to come out there and have a perfect game, the game that he played, just a really great moment. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. All right, once again, thank you for joining me on this abbreviated edition of Locked On Capitals. There was just a bunch of news swirling around camp, different positions, and just to kind of highlight the game last night, and also to say that tomorrow on the show we have Luke James from the Hockey Writers, and I recorded that earlier in the week, but just a really great interview with him as we talk about the Capitals and what we can expect from this year. All right, once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.